Welcome to the Happy Lawyer Project. I'm your host, Akoma Moronu, and I created the show to help lawyers find happiness in life with a law degree. Together with my guests, we provide the knowledge, skills, insight, inspiration, and encouragement you need to find your happy. Today's episode is with the lovely ladies behind the Presley Group. Jessica Johnson and Jaia Thomas launched the Presley Group to support and represent influencers of color. On today's episode, we chat about what it means to be an influencer, tips for entering this up-and-coming market, and general advice for working in new areas of the law. I love the dynamic that these ladies have, and I'm super excited to share this episode. Enjoy. Welcome back to the Happy Lawyer Project, lawyers. I am really excited today because today I have two very special lawyers on today from the Presley Group, Jessica Johnson and Jaia Thomas. Jessica, Jaia, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Well, I am going to ask you ladies, if you could just get started, maybe Jessica, you could go first with just a brief description of who you are and what you do.
Sure. So my name is Jessica Johnson, and I am an attorney based here in Los Angeles. And I am the co-founder of the Presley Group, working with Jaia to connect brands with social media influencers of color. So that's been my main focus for the past few months.
And this is Jaia Thomas. I am also a Los Angeles-based attorney. I practice sports, entertainment, and intellectual property law. I also teach at UCLA and a summer seminar course at Southwestern Law School.
That is so exciting that you guys do influencer law, because that is particularly how I found you ladies and something I was very interested in learning more about, because I've had a couple of influencers on this show and I have a few more coming on in the near future, but I've never had the lawyers who represent this group. So first of all, how did you two meet? And then how did you decide to start the Presley Group?
Sure. So I actually met Jaia through my husband. They were friends in D.C., and when we moved here to L.A., he was like, you need to meet Jaia. She's from Cincinnati. She's an attorney, too. It turns out, we're from the same hometown, and we actually went to the same high school. So it took us moving here to L.A. all the way across the country to connect, but I'm obviously really glad that we did. I brought up the idea of starting a management company for influencers of color to Jaia last year at my birthday brunch in June of 2017. Like everyone else, I consume social media, and I was really struck by the fact that the brands I love just did not have partnerships with influencers who looked like me. And the more that I dug, thinking, surely I'm missing something, the more I found that I wasn't missing anything. There was this gap in the market that needed to be filled. And I went to my birthday brunch with the intention of, getting Jaia's thoughts and insights on the idea. She's a very talented entertainment attorney, and I really admire the way she, does business. And I knew that together we could really, make something happen. And here we are.
So Jaia, what did you think when she brought the idea to you? Were you instantly interested, or was it something that was kind of outside of your wheelhouse?
No, it was definitely something I was interested in right away. So as an entertainment attorney, I had already worked with social media influencers doing their deals with brands and companies. So it was a space I was already pretty familiar with, and I know that's a growing space. It's huge right now, the social media, influencer space. So I thought it was a great idea, and I was definitely on board.
So for those of the listeners out there, and for me, myself, I guess, what constitutes an influencer? Because I hear all this talk, I watch a lot of Gary Vee, I watch a lot, like most people who are on the online space. I hear the words, I know the big names, and I have a general sense. And I hear things like, oh, now micro influencers are the new thing. They want people who have high engagement versus the big time, multi-million, listener or multi-million follower influencers of 3 or 5 years ago. In your mind, what constitutes an influencer? Who are you representing?
So you're right in terms of how the landscape is shifting. Micro influencers do have a lower number of followers, and that could range anywhere from, 10,000 on the low end to 100,000, give or take. But those followers do tend to be a very engaged community that listens when the influencer shares his or her perspective on brands and products. And, micro influencers really allow brands to be very targeted in their marketing strategy. So we, as the Presley Group, we focus on micro influencers for now, but there's definitely still, lots of opportunities for people who do have a large following, and there is a lot of money to be made there. And, Jaia can kind of speak more to those people who do have the multi-million follower accounts.
So, yes, what constitutes an influencer? It really is about those people who have a very strong social media presence that other people look to with regards to whether it's their voice on certain issues or their opinions on certain products and services. That is what I would say constitutes an influencer. Someone that, can sway an audience or give an audience advice or, perspective on certain products and services and kind of help shape their opinion on them. So micro-influencers are definitely becoming a big thing, and there's still a space for those influencers who do have large audiences. So we're talking about influencers who have over 1 million followers and also have high engagement. So those type of influencers, there's definitely a space for them, and those are the ones that really, make the big bucks. So if we're talking about influencers that have over 1 million followers, we're talking about people who are making at least $40,000 per post, to just do one Instagram post about a specific product or a specific service. So micro-influencers are definitely, yeah. Yes, that happens.
$40,000 a post, not a campaign?
No, just one post.
My goodness, that's just a lot of money. But I guess it takes time to build that type of following. So I'm not going to, I think definitely. That we forget that they've put in their time and that they've put in the work, and that's how they got there. Because sometimes people think of it as a get-rich scheme, but it's not when you're talking 1 million followers.
No, exactly. Like, these are people who have been building up their following for a while and, who are creating content every single day and putting it out there and engaging with their followers. So it does definitely take work and take time to build that type of following. But once someone does reach that threshold of $1 million followers, there are a lot of opportunities, for those people to make money. So a lot of the deals I've seen are, $30K, $40K, and that's on the low end for one post.
So just quickly, when you talk about followers, is this a combined on all social media platforms, or do you have to have like a main platform? Like, you have to be considered a YouTube star or an Instagrammer or whatever the case may be, in which most of your followers can be found?
Sure. So it really varies. I would say this day and age, most brands are really looking at Instagram, and maybe sometimes they'll also look at YouTube and Facebook, not so much Twitter at this stage anymore. But it's not, when I say 1 million followers, I'm usually talking about 1 million followers on one platform, not total, not 1 million followers combined across all social media platforms. That's usually just with regards to one platform.
That's amazing. Okay, so you guys decided that you wanted to go into this space. In particular, you wanted to represent people of color who you didn't feel were getting the exposure and having the connections and the opportunities to connect with brands. And I'd be interested in your thoughts on that, because when I think about it, I think of the internet as a place that should create better equity or more equity, because it's more accessible to others than previous generations may have had to brands and things like that. And you think that there's not as many gatekeepers on a platform like the internet, right? And so anybody can build 1 million person following, and then the brand should want to reach out to them because they're at that point the commodity. But why are we not seeing that? Why are we not seeing diversity? Because I, for one, am really big in the travel space. I love travel Instagram accounts. And I actually was writing for an article. I do some travel writing, and I was trying to find family, like people of color family accounts on Instagram. There are so few of them, and I have to dig for them. They're not as publicized and well known, and I don't know why. Their Instagrams are gorgeous. Their stories are amazing. Their content is really good. What do you think is the barrier?
So I think we have to first kind of get the context of influencer marketing. It has been referred to as the Wild West because there are so few rules, so no set rates, not a lot of standardization, etc. I mean, this is a relatively new area. Instagram, as Jaia was mentioning, is the platform that a lot of brands are looking to now. And that has been around since 2010. So we're talking about 8 years here in comparison to the long stretch of, how we traditionally look at advertising and marketing. So, before influencer marketing was, kind of just this like nebulous thing people were trying to figure out. And now it's transitioning from being solely based on what they call vanity metrics, i.e. you just have a ton of followers, to brands being much more strategic, more data-driven, and more targeted in selecting the right influencer for whatever objective they have. So given that it's a relatively new space, people are trying to, figure it out. So I think that's one piece. And Jaia, you can definitely jump in as far as, the diversity and why we're not seeing that specifically.
So I guess to answer the question with regards to why are we not seeing as much diversity with regards to brand campaigns, I think part of it is some of those brands, some of it I don't necessarily think is on purpose. I think some companies and some brands, it just really doesn't even cross their mind. For a lot of marketing departments at certain brands and companies, there aren't a lot of Black and brown people in the room making those decisions about which influencers to hire, which influencers to work with. Oftentimes it's a very white space. And so subconsciously, a lot of times, their first thought is they're going to look at white influencers, So I think that's part of it as well. I think until some of the decision makers diversify with regards to the brands and companies that are hiring influencers, I think once we see more diversity in those rooms, we'll start to see more diversity with regards to actual campaigns. But I do think there is traction, and I do think things are getting better. I think more and more companies are starting to realize the importance of diversity and diversifying their campaigns. So I definitely think it's, on an upward traction. I think there's definitely positive momentum in the right direction.
I'd like to hear a little bit more about that, because I think that people do, especially in this day and age and with the politics of the world being what they are right now, there is a lot of feeling like we're going backwards and like things are not getting better. Mm-hmm. And in the time that you guys have been doing this, I guess, what have you been hearing from brands and what have you been hearing from the influencers that you're working with that kind of gives you hope that things are moving in the right direction? I don't know, Jessica, if there's anything particular that you've seen.
Sure. So one of the things that was pretty prominent at the time was in early January, there was a firestorm regarding the brand Revolve. I'm not sure if you read about this in the news, but they had a Revolve Around the World campaign, and the brand treated several influencers to a luxurious trip in Thailand. Well, their Instagram followers very quickly noticed and called out the absence of non-white women on the trip. And in fact, it launched a hashtag Revolve So White. Now that sparked a much needed conversation on diversity and also a recognition of multicultural influencers who are very talented and have built an online community who trust them. So the conversation and, the recognition that came out of that firestorm, I think really kicked up the engagement from brands and forced them to really start to consider, their marketing strategy when it comes to how inclusive they are. So I think that that's something that was actually a bright spot. When people recognize and talk about an issue, it's much more likely that there will be progress on that issue. And it kind of, relates to what we're trying to do as well. We are hosting a dinner series here in LA. Our first dinner is at the end of this month, and we're bringing brands, creatives, influencers together to talk about creativity, diversity, developments in the space, what's working, what needs to be done. And our goal for these conversations is to fuel action and ultimately the changes that we seek. So, I think there's a lot of conversation around diversity in this space, and I think that that's a good thing and what's needed right now.
I follow a lot of people on YouTube. I don't know why YouTube over Instagram, but I know that in the makeup industry, there's just been a lot of conversation amongst YouTubers about diversity. And so that's always kind of interesting to hear how different people use that platform. Because I think obviously as a person of color, it's easy to know what your stance is, but then to see how the people who are not directly impacted, whether they just brush it under the carpet or if they are willing to address it on their own platforms, because obviously over the holidays, all the makeup artists, they all get the same makeup that they're all supposed to promote as free PR. And the people of color obviously all notice that there's nothing in the packages for them. That, PR people are sending them makeup that just doesn't match their skin. And they're thinking, what are you possibly thinking? And so it's always nice to see their sisters, their friends in the community stand up for them and say, I appreciate what you sent me, but I see that you sent the same thing to Patricia Bright, who can clearly not wear any of this. And so you see influencers standing up for each other. And I think the beauty industry is an easy place because it is so about your skin. Like it is about your color, like actually. And so for that to be their oversight is almost unforgivable because it's their business to create products for skin. But when you're talking about, I know you guys also represent like mommy and me type bloggers and influencers, and you represent travel and you're talking about health and fitness, it can almost seem secondary. And so how do you kind of broach that conversation with brands who don't think about it in that way or haven't really thought about the importance of introducing diversity into their marketing?
Well, I think that the brands who hold that as a value, they are trying to figure it out. So we have not pitched to brands who are not at all interested in having someone of color, having a partnership with someone of color. Now, we do have clients who, do want to work with brands, and we haven't seen a lot of people of color that they've worked with, but there's still someone. So we haven't quite encountered that yet, but definitely something I'm sure that we will on our journey. So yeah.
Well, I mean, maybe not.
Jaya,
Maybe I'm being overly pessimistic. Do you know what I mean? Maybe even if people feel that at this in 2018, no one would say out loud to a person of color, like we're disinterested in even having a conversation about it. And maybe that's a testament to where we are, that even if it isn't an authentic desire to embrace diversity, there's at least enough common sense to know it's a conversation worth having. So basically, I mean, I think a lot of what you do is really entertainment law, right? There's a lot of parallels to that. And I think that's often true when you think about entering to any new space. It's really existing law and then applying that to a new industry. But I think a lot of young lawyers, they want to jump into the new hot thing, right? Whether it's all of the student loan, debt that's creating so much issues, that it's really consumer law issues. And there's the marijuana laws, and then, there's social media, there's influencers. As somebody who's working in the wild, wild west, what advice would you give to a new lawyer or even an experienced lawyer who's interested in developing a career in an area of a law that's not as well developed?
I think my advice would be actually try to get a really good understanding of that area. So, I meet people I've met students who want to work in the social media landscape, but, don't have Twitter, don't have Instagram, and it's just like, well, first you need to know how this whole space works before you can even work in it from a legal perspective. Just from a purely practical perspective, you need to understand how the space works, So, I mean, that's always my first thing. I think sometimes as lawyers, we're taught to understand things from a purely legal perspective, which I don't believe in. I'm someone who is a firm believer in the practical side of things. And so, before you can start really understanding social media agreements, you need to understand how social media works. You need to know what an IG story is, how it works, how long it lasts, how many people can look at it. You know what I mean? So that's one thing I always tell students, or just any attorney looking to get into a new space, like really become a part of the space and really figure out how it works, not just from a legal side, but from a practical side, figure out how it works and just really try to learn the industry in general. People want to get into social media law. A, you probably need to have some social media accounts, and B, read up on it. There are new articles that come out every single day on social media. It's such a fast-paced industry. Same with marijuana and, all the different legal issues going on with marijuana. All of these new areas of the law, they're so fast-paced and they're always evolving that I think it's important to stay up on what's going on in those spaces. Read articles every day, see what changes are being made, see what new policies are being enacted. So I think, that's always my advice. Understand that area of the law from a practical side and stay abreast of what's going on. You don't want to be in a conversation about social media bringing up Snapchat in 2018. No one's using Snapchat. So, those are my two things. Stay abreast of what's going on and really get to know this space firsthand.
Before we take Jaia's advice, I want to drop a little PSA and just say that she's advocating things within the bounds of the law. So only smoke pot to understand the industry if it is legal in the place in which you live. Please tread lightly out there, lawyers. Proceed with caution.
We'll put an asterisk next to marijuana. All the other areas of the law, dive right in.
Yes, I just want to put that out there because I know someone is going to hear that and I'm going to get an email that's like, how much pot do you think I should smoke to understand the industry?
Yeah, we'll put like a footnote next to that area of the law. Everything else, dive right in.
And I think if you're thinking of sending me that email, you may be thinking of getting in that industry for the wrong reasons. So just, a little bit of self-reflection. Okay, Jaia, now, what advice would you give to young lawyers because you're coming from the entertainment law space. So for you, it is you had experience and you're really bringing that breadth of experience to this space. And it's almost a natural transition for you. Do you advise people to kind of go into a more traditional area to learn the basics first, or do you think someone can come straight out of law school and really dive into a new space?
I think someone can come straight out of law school and dive into a new space, especially spaces like this. I don't think they're as complex as maybe other types of law, like tax law or like M&A, areas like that. I think spaces like this, social media and things like that, I don't think the learning curve, I don't think is that. And honestly, a lot of contracts in the entertainment industry in general, and especially within the social media landscape, a lot of them honestly kind of look the same. So once you familiarize yourself with a couple, a lot of those clauses, a lot of those agreements, start to look the same. There may be some changes here or there, but the learning curve, in my opinion, isn't that steep, where I think it is fine to kind of jump right into it.
So before we go, I love to ask people questions about their lifestyle because I think ultimately there's so many of us today who are trying to build a career and build a life that makes sense for us and is sustainable. So what does an average week look like for each of you personally and professionally? How much time are you spending working? How much flexibility do you have in your schedule? I don't know, Jessica, if you want to kick us off.
Sure. So professionally, I am an administrator at a law school here in LA. So I have a day job and I also have a 1-year-old. So I, go to my day job every day and then I come home at night. I spend time putting her to bed each evening, which is really important for me in terms of balance. And after she's in bed, then I work on Presley Group and get caught up on all the news in the industry, which is what Jaia was alluding to. Every day there's something new coming out. There's the different developments. So I make sure that I'm abreast of everything that's been transpiring. And then, I spend time with my husband, hopefully. And then after that, I definitely try to get some rest. I am not one of those people who, sleep when you're dead. No, I strive to get at least 5 hours each night. So my last year has really, been a balancing act having a new baby and, all of that. So that's kind of what my typical week looks like. But I'm sure that this year it will start to look a lot differently since I have kind of learned how to balance the two a bit better.
And I work for myself. I have my own practice. So I don't, honestly, every day is a little different for me. I don't have set hours, like a 9 to 5 per se. Some days I'm up at 6 a.m. working, and some nights I'm up until midnight working, depending on what's on my plate, the clients I'm working with, or, a deal that's on the table. So honestly, every day kind of varies. With regards to my clients, all of my work is transactional. So most days I'm reviewing contracts or negotiating deals. I also do a lot of stop IP work for clients. So also spending a lot of time registering intellectual property with the Copyright Office or the Trademark Office. But every day as an entrepreneur, every single day is different. So there are some weekends where I work the entire weekend, all day Saturday, all day Sunday. So it really just varies in terms of my week. But that's usually the bulk of my time, my practice. We're dealing with my clients and any other things that may come up with my practice. And then, as I mentioned, I do teach. So I teach one day a week at UCLA. And that takes up time just preparing for the class and actually teaching the class. And I do a lot of traveling as well for work and for maybe speaking at different conferences, things along those lines, and different events. Like right now I'm in Austin for South by Southwest. So it's a lot of traveling, a lot of kind of crazy hours. So it really, the life of an entrepreneur definitely varies day to day.
Your schedule seems to be a little bit more kind of variable. And I wonder, do you have for yourself kind of boundaries around when too much is too much or when you cut back, or do you just kind of play it by ear and know when you're at your breaking point? Because I find that when I get to those places where I'm like doing a lot and I'm traveling a lot for work, I have a lot of balls in the air, lots of projects. If I don't set markers for myself, I burn out because I don't know when enough is enough. And I end up in the hospital with like dehydration. Like that's like the crazy stuff I do to myself. And so I'm the kind of person who's like, okay, I can only do this many, all-nighters in a week. I can only do, because then my husband has indicators for when I've gone too far. Do you find that you have that problem, or are you a much more normal person and don't try to kill yourself with work?
Yeah, I definitely don't try to kill myself. So I kind of know when not to go overboard, but I do kind of play it by ear. So I don't have set markers like, okay, I'm only going to work 12 hours today. Or, I really do play it by ear. But when I do get this sense that I'm like reaching a breaking point, then, I reel it in and I stop. But I do have some friends, a lot of my friends are entrepreneurs, especially attorneys. And some of them do have very clearly defined markers. I have some friends who are like, I don't check my email after 5, period, during the week. Once 5 hits, like, I don't check email. I have another friend who's like, I don't work on the weekends, period. If a client contacts me on Saturday or Sunday, like, I'm not replying until Monday. So I definitely do have some friends who work like that. I just personally, I have to play it more by ear with regards to my clients because emergencies come up. And so I have to be a lot more fluid and just kind of see what happens and play it by ear.
I think that's great. And I think that I wish I had a little bit more of that ability to be self-reflective. I think it's a little hard these days in the stage of life I'm in, just because I have 2 really small kids. So I need to be really planning ahead. Whereas before, if I needed to just shut down and like sleep for 18 hours, I could. But now it's like, if I burn out and I need 18 hours, I still have 2 small people who are not going to let me sleep for 18 hours. So,
Right. That's true.
And who knows when they're going to get sick? Who knows when they're going to have all sorts of their own business going on that I can't control. So I have to save enough energy to know that I can do me and do them. But I absolutely respect that the intuitive nature of just kind of being there for your clients and doing the work you need to do and then knowing when you need to pull back. I think that's great. I've loved talking to you, ladies, and I'm so fascinated by what you do. And I just want to ask you one last question before we kind of wrap up. And what advice, knowing what you know now about the practice of law, because you both seem like you've kind of felt your way through it and found this space that's really exciting to work in, knowing what you know now, what would you tell yourself in your second year of law school? You can take a second. Jessica, I don't know if you have any thoughts.
Wow, that's a great question. In my second year of law school, I would have told myself to really just be authentically who you are, because ultimately that's going to, kind of nag at you until you address and feed your authentic self. I think it can be easy in law school and in the legal space to kind of just get wrapped up in, how things are supposed to be and what you're supposed to do. And sometimes that's definitely satisfying for some people, and for other people that may not be as much. So I would just really encourage myself to follow the things that I'm interested in. Thankfully, I did. When I got out of law school, I really went into education because I was really fascinated about, education and the legal implications of that. And it's something that, I pursued. But I also was interested in other things as well. But I just didn't think, I didn't know what to do with it. So I didn't really, go after it like I think I should have. So that's what I would really tell myself, is just to think about what fills me up and what I want to do, even if it's not, what everyone else is doing. I think that would be the advice that I'd give.
That's hard.
I think
you said it's hard.
No, it's good advice. I think I think a lot of people would give themselves that advice because, especially when you get in law school, it's you get into that group think. And you get on that.
Mm-hmm.
There seems, for some reason, very limited options, it feels like, coming out of law school for what you can do. And then...
Right. When there are a ton of options. And like these new spaces that are popping up, it's great, advice that Jaia gave earlier. Don't be afraid to go into those spaces. I mean, especially when they're new and they're developing, that's a great time to get into it because it's not rigid. It's not set, and you can really blaze a trail when it comes to kind of those industries. So, don't be afraid to kind of dive right in.
I love that. I love that advice, and I love that Jaia said that she thought people could go right into it, because I think that in this profession, there is such a reverence for tradition and for kind of doing things the way you're supposed to do things. So I do think people feel inclined to, no matter what they want to do, start in like a law firm for the quote unquote training. And often they're not even getting the training that they want or need. They're just there for the name and the credentials and kind of the clout that comes with saying you did that. And they would really be better off just going out there and like doing the work and learning the industry versus spending 3 years doing doc review. But Jaia, what advice would you give to yourself as a second year? I wonder, what were you like, and kind of were you also driven by what you thought you were supposed to be doing with your legal career?
Yeah, definitely. In law school, at least in my law school, they definitely pushed big firm, which I did for a while, but obviously don't do it anymore. And kind of looking back on my 2L year, I guess 2 pieces of advice I would give is, number one, really try to develop your network. I think sometimes people wait until after they graduate from law school to really start trying to develop their network. And that's something I wish I actually did a better job of in law school in terms of developing my network. But that's something I would definitely recommend, as a 2L, tap into potential contacts with regards to a particular practice area you're interested in. But not only, practicing attorneys, but also your classmates. You never know later on down the line how a classmate be able to send you a referral or tell you about a new job opportunity. So, and that's something I personally know I didn't do a great job of in law school. And also, for me, my law school was huge. It's like the second or third largest law school in the country. So it was a little more difficult, but it's definitely something I wish I did a better job of, because that network within your law school can pay huge dividends later on. So that's one thing I would say. Your network can be such a key component to your success that I would say, hone into it as early on as possible. And the second piece, as I was talking about earlier, just the practical aspects of things. For me, law school those 3 years of law school and all the classes I took, today I probably use about maybe 5% of what I learned in law school.
That's probably generous.
I mean, it's just not like most of those classes. I don't use comma. I don't use CivPro. Like most of those classes are not going to be very helpful for, most students, 5 years, 10 years down the line when they're practicing. So as I mentioned earlier, like I'm just a huge proponent in practical skill sets. I don't necessarily think a lot of classes in law school provide practical skill sets. And so, if you're afforded the opportunity to take classes that allow for practical skill sets, I would definitely recommend doing that. So if your law school does offer, more practical classes, even clinics where you're actually getting like actual experience as opposed to just reading case law all year, I would definitely recommend that. So whether it's your school, if they're offering practical classes, take them. Or like at my law school, we could take classes within other schools within the university. So the business school or school of communication, we were allowed to take classes in those other schools, which I did. And I tell students, if you can do that in your school, definitely do it. To just learn about the practical aspect of being an attorney and being successful. Like half of being successful isn't knowing case law. Like that has very little to do, with really being successful. And so I'm just a huge proponent of take classes that are going to teach you practical skill sets at the end of the day.
That's wonderful advice. And I wish that the administrators and the, people who are creating curriculums at law school would do more of that. Because I completely agree with you. I use less than 5% of what I learned in my day,
Exactly.
And it's shocking to me that the things I did learn that I use are not what I learned at law school. I also took classes at other schools, and I took, like finance and accounting for lawyers at the business school and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And that came directly out of me asking questions to people who I looked up to. And I said, what skill sets do you find that lawyers are lacking?
Mm-hmm.
What do you wish what do you wish more lawyers knew coming into your business? Because, we know how to think, we know how to write like abstractly, like those are skill sets we've all honed, but understanding like a balance sheet, most lawyers have no time for that. And I feel like when you're advising a company, that's all that matters. You know what I mean? Like that's like the core of the company is how the money works. And today, I advise, I just moved in-house and I advise my treasury team and I advise my finance team. And they said that, they went through an entire restructuring with a top 10 law firm. And about halfway through the restructuring, they realized that a bunch of the junior associates had no idea how to read their balance sheet. And I was like, how can you think about restructuring a company if you literally don't even understand how the company's money works? And
wow.
So I think that that's really great advice. And I think that when you think about practical skills, if you're confused about what practical skills you may be lacking, a great way to find out is just ask people. Like if there's somewhere you would like to work, just say, what skills do first-year lawyers come in not knowing that you wish they knew? And
right.
That's a great way to start, at least. Well, I'm going to let you ladies go. And before I do, I would love if you could share a little bit about the best way for people to follow you and learn more about what you do.
Sure. So you can find us on Instagram at the Presley Group. And you can also check out our website, thepresleygroup.co. And you can find out information about us, what we're up to. As I mentioned, we're going to do that dinner series at the end of this month. So really excited about that, and you can learn more about it on those platforms.
Fantastic. I would say thank you so much for being a part of this project and sharing your story with us here today. Last question, which I ask every single lawyer who's ever been on the show, and that is, we'll start with Jaia this time. What do you believe separates happy lawyers from lawyers who struggle to find happiness in life with a law degree?
I would probably say balance. I think balance is important, and, outside of practicing law, finding things that you actually enjoy in your free time and, doing things that make you happy outside of your job, I think is key. So that's probably what I would say.
Fantastic. Jessica, what do you think?
Yeah, sure. So I guess it would be two things for me. I spoke earlier about just really feeding your authentic self, and even if your job is not necessarily your passion, it's awesome if it is. if it's not your passion, then as Jaia mentioned, finding the time to really do the things that you enjoy, because it will fill you up and make you perform better at your job and other areas of your life. So I think that's important. And then, of course, perspective. Anytime that I am, in a bad mood or struggling through something, 9 times out of 10, it's because I'm focusing on the negative. And when I start to focus on the positive, it changes my mood. So I always, encourage my friends and other attorneys who are going through things to really try to, switch your perspective around and make sure that you do have that balance in your life. So that would be my advice.
Well, you guys make wonderful partners because your answers really work together so well. Thank you so much, ladies, for being on.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening this week, you guys, and joining me for the Happy Lawyer Project podcast. If you enjoyed the show, please feel free to share it with your friends. And I'd love for you to head over to iTunes and leave a rating and review. I want to say a huge thank you to everyone who's already left a review, sent me an email, DM'd me on Instagram, or reached out to me in any other way. I truly appreciate you and love hearing from you. And I want to just remind everyone that this week's sponsor is Common Bond. So if you're considering refinancing your student loans this year, I would definitely head over to commonbond.co/happylawyer to check them out. As a reminder, you'll receive a $200 cash bonus for using that link. Until next week, I hope everyone finds their happy.